Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Golden Rosa Oracle. Thank you for being here today. Um, for December's love reading, I just want to acknowledge that while this month it can be a very beautiful and magical season of love and celebrations and gatherings, it can also be a really, really difficult time. I know for myself sometimes it is. And as much as it's a beautiful thing to gather with our loved ones, we're not always able to. Some years are lonelier than others. Sometimes we're missing people that aren't in our lives anymore. Sometimes we have other um, issues going on in our life, maybe illness or financial stress or things that are just not going as planned. And so I know this can be a very difficult time emotionally for a lot of people, especially because we're sold as a society on this perfect image of the perfect family gathering under the Christmas tree and opening presents and being very happy and joyous and together. And it's not the reality for everybody. Like, not everyone celebrates Christmas. Not everyone's able to see their family. Not everyone has a family that's safe to gather with. And so it can bring up a lot of feelings of sadness. It can bring up a lot of feelings of heaviness and not belonging. And probably most of us, myself included, have experienced the full spectrum in our lives of this holiday season, being either a very joyous time or extremely sad time. And so for today's love reading, I'm hoping we'll get some messages come through that will be of a comfort if you're having a sadder kind of holiday, and inspirational, if you do get to have the great blessing of gathering with your loved ones. I just want to acknowledge both sides of the spectrum here. They're both a normal part of life, that we have emotional highs and lows and different circumstances as we go through life. So I just want everyone to feel welcome here. I want everyone to feel held in love. I've called on our dear Ascended Master, Mother Mary, to be with us today to overlight this reading and bring her love through for all of us. And so I hope that we can have a little time together that leaves you filled up with some love and some good feelings, regardless of your particular circumstances this year. If it is a harder, heavier, sadder year, I'm so sorry. I'm sending you a big energetic hug, and I hope this reading can bring a little comfort. So I'm starting off with this inner child deck. I'm just going to ask, dear Spirit, what messages might want to come through from our inner child this December in the area of love, all right, beautiful. So right off the bat, we're getting this card that says, let it come forth. Give yourself permission to feel it. And the message is, many things occur in life that we may be unable to process, and most, if not all, of these unprocessed events and emotions can be stored inside of us. If you have pulled this card, then it might mean there is a repressed emotion, memory, or aspect of self that is hindering you in your current situation. As repressed emotions can subconsciously fuel many of our behaviors and interactions within the world, it can be beneficial to explore this. One way of dealing with this overwhelming emotion is by accessing them through physical, intuitive movement. For this practice, feel your body and move how you feel led to move, particularly focusing on any areas that feel good, as if they are under pressure. If you need to punch the air, go for it. If you need to scream or dance wildly, go for it. As you practice this exercise, try to surrender to how your body needs to move. Try to withhold judgment and practice this exercise alone. If you have trouble letting go, be gentle with yourself. Note this can be a heavy practice. Please only continue if you're comfortable working with and releasing stuck or repressed emotions. It says, if you need further assistance, in this practice, consider visiting a therapist or trauma work professional. So yes, we don't want to get we don't want to overload ourselves with emotions that are more than we can carry. But I think that the truth of this card is so apparent that you can even be having a really happy holiday season, whether you get triggered, or you miss someone who's no longer earthside, or you have a longing for a partner or your own children, or there's probably for a lot of us there's a mix of the happy and the sad, and there's sort of a magnification of our emotions at this time. And so this is a really important message, I think, is just to let yourself feel everything, because at the end of the day, that's the human experience, right? Is we feel a lot of different things. um, I'm very fascinated by watching near-death experiences on YouTube. And for the most part, when you hear about people on the other side, and this is separate from any particular belief about what happens there, but these people's accounts of their experience, generally they describe feelings of overwhelming love, peace, bliss, just good feelings. So unfortunately, as humans, that's not really the case. We have a whole variety, and I shouldn't say unfortunately, but like that's the nature of the game down here. Is that we feel a lot more than just divine bliss and love and peace. We feel a full spectrum and a full rainbow of different sorts of emotions. And so, whatever you're feeling at this time, whether it's good or bad, just the message coming through today is just to feel it all. Like every feeling has its purpose. Every feeling is leading us to some understanding, some healing, some expression that needs to be released. So, to the degree that, as the card mentioned, to the degree that it's safe for you to do so, this is a really good time to just really tune in and feel all your feels, as uncomfortable as it may be at times, or hopefully, even in the good moments, you want to be present, because the thing with life is it's temporary, and our relationships are inherently temporary, and circumstances change. And so whether you find yourself having a beautiful holiday, or one of those holidays you'd rather just forget, it's going to be temporary. And can we show up for all of it? Can we feel through all of it? Because feeling our grief, it deepens the well in which we're able to feel joy in the future. And when we have a really beautiful moment, we want to say, I experienced that fully. I was fully present with this person when they were here. I was fully present in this situation as it was happening. And I always have this memory. I always have this place in my heart I can return to, because I let myself completely open to it and feel it. It didn't just pass by in a whirl of me being, distracted, or um, sort of nonchalant about it. So, all right. Right off the bat, it's like already really intense season, and then it's like, feel it all. Okay. Um, let's go next to our woodland wardens. And this deck has some advice from our plant friends and our animal friends. So let's see what they have to say. Now, dear plant and animal friends, do you have some advice for us going into this season of heightened emotions? What will your lesson in love be for us in this month of December, in this holiday season? All right, so we got the moth and the eucalyptus, and the key word is an ending. And the number for this card is 13, which also correlates with the 13th card of the tarot, which is the death card, which is not literal, does not mean literal death. It's just, but it ties into what I was saying before, that all of our circumstances are temporary. And the more that we understand the preciousness of the moment before us, or the temporal nature of the moment before. If it's not so precious, that this too shall pass, and then if it is a beautiful moment, to really appreciate it, really deeply appreciate the gift of this love or this beautiful experience that we're having. It says the moth in the eucalyptus is at number 13 for a reason. It mirrors the meaning of the death card in the traditional tarot deck. The death card rarely indicates literal death, but rather marks an ending of some kind, provides us with the knowledge and the power to let go. The moth shown here is the death's head hawk moth, named for its unique skull-like marking on its back. The death's head is nocturnal, and like all moths, it flies towards the light. Eucalyptus is a symbol of protection, as oils from this plant can be used to guard against and soothe a variety of ailments. And the questions here are, how can I be more accepting of change? And what tools do I have that might help me feel safe and protected when a change occurs in my life? It's interesting. Yeah, it is it's kind of, it feels like kind of a darker card to come up, but I think that's something I wanted to address in this reading, is how this time of year it's not always that, picture perfect holiday card, and in fact many times it's not. And the the sort of temporal experiences that we're having in any given moment on earth can be very amplified by the energies of the holidays, can feel very, like, oppressive, or like you're outside looking in, like that can be a really common feeling to feel at this time. And I think the message here is just that all things are temporary, whether you're going through a good holiday season to really enjoy it, or you're going through a difficult one, to know that all things come to an end. Even our loneliness can come to an end, even if we feel like this is the worst holiday season we've ever had in our life. That doesn't mean that the next one can't be better. So it's accepting this cycle of regeneration in our lives, and appreciating what we have when we have it, and knowing that the difficult times aren't going to last forever, that we always have this power of creation. And so it gives us this format and this understanding for bringing forth these really big emotions, that may be coming up, but whether they're really big good emotions or really big bad emotions, that we're always in this continuous cycle of death and rebirth and death and rebirth. So appreciate what is beautiful in your life now while you have it, and know that when things feel more bare and feel more dead, and at a standstill in our life, that's also just a temporary phase. So, getting really dark and deep right from the get-go. Okay, let's go now. Let's check in with Mother Mary. I did ask her to overlight this reading for us. Dear Mother Mary, do you have a message for us for the month of December, for dealing with all our big feels that are coming up at this time? I know you are the loving and compassionate embodiment of the Great Mother, as Jesus' earthly mother. And you must have a lot of good advice for us at this time. So how would you advise us to deal with the emotions of this season in the spirit of love? Thank you. I just got like a little flash of it. It's like a biblical verse where it says something about like all the old things shall pass by and be made new, a new heaven, a new earth. I think Jesus. I mean, I'm not a Christian. I don't follow that religion, but I do seek wisdom wherever I can find it, and I think that he often spoke in parables and metaphors, and I think it's a good reminder for this time of year, is that, like I was saying, like all the circumstances of our life will eventually end, but there will also be a new circumstance that takes its place. So there's um, kind of a bittersweet relief in that, I guess, whatever side of the spectrum you find yourself on. All right, I feel like this one's just like wanting to pop out. Okay. So we have Our Lady of the Abundant Garden. And the message is, I provide life without limit. You have no need to fear loss or lack. For everything that dies, new life is created to supplant it. For every need that you have, there are ample channels through which that need can be fulfilled. I can provide all, with wisdom, grace, and even joyful humor. You can find a way to delight in life and enjoy all the riches that are available to you. If you only open your heart and release your fear, it is habit, not reality, which keeps you uncertain. Trust in me, my child, and be nourished in my living garden of love. Oh, what a beautiful message. This oracle comes at a time when you are being asked to let go of fears of abandonment in your relationships or fears of failure at work, fears of not being recognized or valued, fears that would prevent you from taking the steps that you need to take now or in the future. This oracle comes at a time when your situation is healing and you need to trust in new ways, feeling open and abundant. It comes at a time when those around you might be in fear and reaction, and you're needed to be the one who stays in your heart and trust in the divine plan. You might be the one through which the mother wants to pour her assistance, because you're capable of remaining open to her and not closing down in distrust or shock. Our Lady of the Abundant Garden comes to you with a gift of abundance, and you are asked to remain open and know that she has endless provisions through which she blesses the unfolding spiritual destinies of all her children. So it's a beautiful message, and it's an energy that's come through a lot in my readings lately that I've been doing for myself, is that, for sure as humans we go through really difficult experiences here on earth, and we go through really difficult lessons, and we're healing and growing, and we're dealing with other people who are healing and growing, and very, very messy situations here on the planet, and it can feel overwhelming. It can feel like everything's sort of falling apart, because right now it kind of is in this sense of, societal structures and things. But I think the beautiful energy that always comes through, that's coming through in this card, is that there's these divine forces that always have our back. There's always this rebirth. There's always this chance to start anew. There's always this chance to rebuild and refresh and reframe, because this love is always streaming towards us. And so it's like, are we going to focus on what's crumbled away? Are we going to focus on the beauty that can still come in? And that's not to say that anything of our past is to be forgotten. It's just, like I was saying, it's like, for everything that gets torn down in our life, there can be a rebuilding of that. Even with someone who's crossed over in spirit, for example, if you're really missing someone who's in spirit, that's an extremely difficult thing to go through. But there can, even in that situation, be a rebirth of that relationship to them as a spirit, that they can become a stronger spirit guide in your life, that and then just the knowing that eventually you're gonna all be reunited. So it's just opening your heart and your imagination to saying, what if this all turns out okay? What if everything ultimately works out, in whatever way you're grieving at this time, whatever, sort of seeming death you're up against it. There's, what could be more opposite from death than an abundant garden, and the abundant garden is the energy of spirit. It is the energy of divine source. It is the energy of this like pure love that's always wanting to give to us, but we have to be receptive to it, and I think that comes back to this, feeling your feelings, because when we're trying to block out pain, when we're trying to block out suffering and uncomfortable feelings, we're also blocking out the beautiful divine love that wants to reach us, that wants to heal us, that wants to give to us. And so we have to be willing to just go through the process, go through it's the alchemical, burning and disintegration and purification of life. But it's always ultimately for the goal of returning to this garden, and it makes me think of the Garden of Eden as well, sticking with the Christian mythologies, that we're always accepted by the divine love. We're always in this beautiful, abundant garden. We always have the ability to be creators ourselves, to plant things. If our life feels lonely, we always have the ability to bring more love into our lives. So whatever we feel like we're missing at this time of the year, there's always the opportunity to rebuild. There's always the opportunity to grow, and the divine wants that for us. The divine doesn't want us to be alone and scared and sad and unhappy. The divine wants us to be flourishing and growing and happy and peaceful, and it's going to support us in that. So even though it can be a hard journey, and for sure it's not saying we don't go through deaths and we don't go through dark nights of the soul and we don't go through really hard times. It's just to understand that what the divine wants for us, that divine love, is to be in this state of flourishment. It doesn't want us to stay in the dark, so that may be a part of the process, just like you pull weeds and you trim plants back, and there's this aspect of pruning and weeding and purifying that is an aspect of life, and there's the aspect of it being a temporal kind of plane in which we're existing. So there's like so much suffering in that, but that the suffering itself is not meant to keep us in a state of despair, but to ultimately lead to our garden growing and flourishing and being, fruitful and having this life that is very beautiful and abundant, with these flowers and fruits and vegetables and bees and butterflies. So yeah, that's does that make sense? All right. Let's go now to our dear brother Rumi, who's an amazing Sufi poet. And let's ask Rumi for some advice. We're getting this reading is like very intense, but I guess the feelings this time of year are really intense too. So let's just face that reality. Okay. Our dear brother Rumi, do you have a message for us for this month of December with all of its heightened emotions and how to navigate these particular energies in our life? Thank you. Are you coming out? All right, we got Sacred Soul Sister. And the Rumi poem for this card is: when you are conscious, a cloud of sadness surrounds you. When you are beyond consciousness, the moon rests in your arms. When you are conscious, the beloved moves out of your reach. When you are beyond consciousness, the ecstasy of love moves your way. When you are conscious, you are depressed like fall. When you are beyond consciousness, the winter cold feels like spring. All of your wavering is due to your longing to be stable. Look for instability until you become stable. And it says, I love you. I am your other self. I am with you always, your partner on this soul journey. I am the one that you do not see. I am the you that speaks through intuition and instinct. I whisper and sing and shout my craves to truth telling to you through your dreams, through your body. And I am the you that is wise, that trusts life, that knows. I am the you that sees reality rather than appearance. I am the you that knows how to be happy and free. There is a valid point of view that we travel this path of our life journey alone. Our deepest descent into the psyche happens alone. We meet death alone. We come into the world alone. And yet there is a vaster perspective that we are never alone, that it would be impossible to really be alone. We are connected to all of life. There is no such thing as being alone in reality, only in limited and temporary perception. As if such community were not enough, there is a partner, an ally, who journeys with you from birth to death and beyond again and again and again. You have a sacred sister, the sister of your soul. She weaves the stories of truth through dreams and insights that come upon you as if from nowhere. Perhaps they drop into your mind or seem to erupt from within you, but that is her talking to you, demanding or reassuring depending on what the occasion best calls for at that moment. Your sacred soul sister is your partner of consciousness. Make no mistake, she is you. She is just the part of you that is so great you can not always see her from your conscious mind. So rather than through direct perception, the sacred soul sister is met through reflection. To tap into her wisdom, to distill a teaching from the fragmented memory of a dream, or a subtle feeling experienced in meditation, requires that you walk with her gait and not the fast-paced, forward-moving canter of your conscious and intellectual mind. To commune with her, wise as that impulse is, requires that you learn the ways of her world and the strange symbolic language she speaks. She will never tell you what you already know. No, she prefers to educate, intrigue, and beguile you into as you are drawn into far more beautiful and powerful and helpful truths. So this card is talking about how we always have the company of our own soul, and that's um, a comforting thing, no matter what we're going through. That there's this very vast, infinite, eternal aspect of ourself that is always seeing our human aspect through any given situation. So even when we do feel completely alone in our humanity, in this world of materialism, that we're always being guided and taught and loved and held by our own soul. And I know that sort of woohoo spiritual speak. So that, it's not always comforting when you feel very alone, when you feel very bereaved. But it's in those moments sometimes that we are forced to really see ourselves. If we don't have anyone else around, to distract you, if you are feeling very alone, feeling very, there's a saying that the wound is where the light gets in, so if you this holiday season, if you are having that experience of being very alone or very sad or very down and out, there is always the opportunity to tune into your own soul. And it's not to say that you're going to feel that way your whole life. It's not saying, oh, just give up and, be your only friend is yourself. That wouldn't be much fun for anybody. But if you haven't yet made contact with your own soul, this may be that invitation to do so, because it is the foundation for moving through all of life's challenges. Like, life is extremely challenging. It just is. And when we have a strong connection to the eternal part of ourselves, and obviously it's going to ebb and flow. Like, we're all going to have times when we feel more connected than others, and that's a natural part of being human. But these darker times, these more alone times, are an invitation to step into this like deeper connection with ourselves, this part of ourselves that is so infinite, so vast, so wise, um, so all-knowing, so at peace with everything. The soul's never worried, the soul's never concerned about our circumstances. The soul's just kind of like, it's just hanging out, observing us having this human experience. And it's this constant companion, and we can always tune into our own soul. And so I have compassion for those moments in which humanity, when people have to dig that deep to survive, because it's usually a pretty deep pain or a deep aloneness that causes one to tune in to that degree, to feel that depth within, that constant companion within. But the good news is, once you have made contact with that part of yourself, it's going to make the rest of everything go a lot smoother. It's like having this like superhero bestie, and you can start asking your soul the big questions and co-creating with your soul, so that, yes, inevitably the external circumstances of your life can improve, but it is a blessing, even though it doesn't feel like it, when we have circumstances that bring us into communion with our own soul, because it really does enrich the rest of your life. It's like it's kind of the initiation of that process can be really hard, but the blessings are just infinite. So have heart if you are in a place like that, where you're just feeling like, very alone at this time, that it is an opportunity to go really deep and find that place within you where you're always held in love just by your own soul. And when you know you're held in love by your own soul, it really does enrich and expand the rest of your life going forward. Now, this reading is it's gotten very deep and dark, but that it is the darkest time of the year, and unfortunately, with the pressure of the holidays, it can be a very dark time for a lot of people. So I hope that if you're experiencing that, then there's some comfort in knowing that you're not alone, that this is kind of part of the human package, is to have these kinds of feelings. So let's just get a couple more here. I'm going to go to Mary Magdalene now. Get a card from her. Dear Mary Magdalene, do you have a message for us? A message of love for the month of December. Thank you. Interesting. It says, I trust what my soul desires. All right, we're just talking about connecting with our soul. It says, according to legend, Mary crossed on the Mediterranean Sea to the south of France on a ship without sails after Christ's crucifixion, in order to escape Roman persecution. 2 other women named Mary were on the ship with her, as well as a little girl named Sarah. Some legends suggest that Sarah was Christ and Mary's daughter. I'm just going to interject here, like, once again, that I'm not Christian. I know a lot of this reading is talking about ascended masters of the Christian faith, but it's also important to know that you can tune into these very loving energies without being a member of any particular religion, which is the approach I'm coming from. I just want to be very clear that it's very inclusive to all beliefs. These are, you could just look at them as stories or archetypes. But I think that there's wisdom in these stories, and that's why they've had such a profound effect on humanity. I'm not saying that I know what ultimate truth is, but I just want to put out there that this isn't a religious reading, even though these characters are usually associated with a religion. So, okay. I've always imagined that Mary felt anguish having to leave ancient Israel, the land where she met and loved and lost Christ. What the ego wants is real and powerful, and also a part of what it means to be human. We're meant to feel the exquisite suffering of not always getting what the ego craves. We cling to the desires of the ego, most often not even realizing that it's the ego driving us to crave so desperately. Christ explains the creation of the ego so perfectly in the Gospel of Mary. Mary gave birth to a passion which has no image, because it derives from what is contrary to nature. A disturbing confusion then occurred in the whole body. Matter meaning our flesh. Our beloved body gives birth to passion, the ego, which has no eternal lasting image like that of the soul. This passion, this ego, is contrary to nature because it seeks to control the flow of energy. The ego doesn't want to die. The ego is terrified of change. The ego wants life to unfold according to a chronological time frame. And this is necessary because if we didn't have this passion, this ego, we wouldn't be able to function here while human, while embodied. The soul needs the ego. Our work here is to discern when it's the ego that's leading and when it's the ego that's clinging to an outcome. And then, with as much mercy as possible, help release the ego's grasp so that the soul can return to its stance at the helm of our life. We want the soul to lead us, and that's often terrifying because the soul is constantly leading us towards what's new, what's next, and what has never been done before. The soul wants us to be fully present because transformation only happens in the present tense. And our meditation for this card is, what have I been clinging to or trying to control? And yeah, that's a kind of a perfect way of summing up kind of what we're talking about here, is how in the holidays, we have these ideas. We're impressed upon by our society to believe we're supposed to experience this perfect looking holiday and, have this perfect family and this perfect love and everything's supposed to be amazing. And our ego goes, yeah, that's what I want. And if I don't have that, then there's a problem. But our soul might be leading us onto a sort of deeper adventure. Our soul might be taking us in a different direction. And like I said, that doesn't mean that you're never going to have a happy family or a happy gathering in your whole life, but there's this whole other narrative happening in our realities. And sometimes when things feel very, very dark from the perspective of the ego is when we're the most lit up from within, from our own souls, because we have nowhere else to turn, right? So we have to trust that, it's like we have these two, it's like we're all sort of conjoined twins as humans. We're our human self and our soul self, and they're always connected, they're always one. But the ego always wants to run the show. The ego wants to say, this is how things should be, how I want them to be, I wish they were. And then the soul is like, well, what if what if it's just not? And then what? And trusting that bigger part of yourself that, like I said, the spirit is always wanting us to be happy. Like I said, every near death experience I've ever watched talks about being extremely happy, extremely blissful, extremely at peace. So there's this push and pull between these two aspects of ourselves that can be really heightened in the holiday season. And so if we're not having that ideal holiday season, if the feels are, not the best ones, just try to remember that there's a bigger picture always playing out. Sometimes we have to be patient, sometimes we have to burn through some, dross and some denser energies, and let go of some things. And like I said, going back to like the pruning the garden, and um, to get to where we ultimately belong. And completely unrelated, but the imagery of this card is very similar to in the tarot. There's the seven, is it the seven, six of swords maybe? I'm gonna go with six. I think it's the six of swords, where they're traveling by boat from choppy water to calm water, and that's kind of the journey our soul is always taking us on, that we have to trust that we're going over this choppy water, but we're headed somewhere, to smoother sailing. Here Mary Magdalene is headed to the south of France to escape persecution, but it's like this soul that's like driving part of ourselves is always going to be taking us to that smoother water, but it might be going through like this uncertainty. You're on this boat in the middle of the ocean, where am I going to end up? And she did, according to legend, end up having this very beautiful next chapter of her life in the south of France. But in following where her soul wanted to go, you know, she was out here on this ocean having no idea where she was going to end up, had lost her beloved, had to flee her homeland, I mean, talk about a pretty unhappy circumstance, but ultimately she was led to this um, rebirth, as becoming a saint in her own right, and creating a energetic legacy, which is very much, part of, like, there's a huge awakening of her energy on the planet at this time of the divine feminine, and it's a massive part of the story. It's like the second part of it. If you look at Jesus being the the awakening of the sort of more masculine aspect of a enlightened consciousness, she's the more feminine aspect of it, and now we're seeing this huge resurgence of, now we have Mary Magdalene, oracle cards and books, and a lot of women talking about her energy, and men as well. We each have that feminine masculine energy within, and it's, to go from this place of uncertainty and loss and immense heartbreak, losing everything, into becoming one of the most powerful, spiritual energies, like, on earth at this time that I'm aware of, is quite a story, right? but it comes down to trusting what the soul desires over what the ego desires, because she could have just decided to follow Jesus into the next world, and I think most of us would probably consider that option, like, in that state of, like, so much loss, but this is showing us that there's always this potential for, like, a second chapter, which is equally as powerful to what we feel like we're losing. All right, let's get one more card. This has gone much darker and deeper than expected to, but I'm glad, because I think this time of year really does bring up some really deep feelings for people, and it's good to know. It's good to know that we can be held in our darkest times and be brought back to the light and love. And let's get one last energy from Spirit here. Team Spirit, thank you for this beautiful reading, for giving us some insight into navigating the heightened emotions of the month of December. And we have a final message for us. Oh, very cool. So we got power and we got healing chaos. And I just want to move them like that. I feel like that's going to flow a little more. So for healing chaos, we have the spiraling tornado. Energy in our universe spirals. Water spirals in the wake of the fist that swims through the stream. Air spirals in the wake of a bird in flight. The moon spirals around the earth, which spirals around the sun, which spirals around the galaxy. Even our DNA is a spiral. It is the healing principle of life. It's not an accident that the ancient symbol for healing is the caduceus, two spiraling serpents. It is the sacred spiral. Most people assume that there is nothing good that comes from tornadoes, but every part of nature has value. For example, although some birds lose their habitat from a tornado, birds such as the prairie warbler, whippoorwill, woodpecker, grouse, and woodcock, as well as forest salamanders, all benefit from the new landscape created by tornadoes. Downed trees provide habitat for black bears and white-tailed deer, and create dens for many kinds of animals. Tornadoes churn up the soil in ways that rejuvenate the earth. When you receive this card, it acknowledges potential chaos, or the need for chaos, as an activator for profound healing. If your life seems chaotic, know that it has an underlying energy of healing. You're being healed on all levels. You are a healer. Alternately, if your life is calm to the point of being stagnant, this card suggests it might be time to create a bit of chaos in your life. It will activate healing. Do the unexpected. Mix life up a bit. That could be an interesting energy to bring to the family dinner. Say the thing. Stir up the pot. Let the healing commence. All right. I'm not saying you should poke the bear, but it sounds like it's not a bad thing if it happens, right? All right. And let's end tonight with this card of power. Mountain thunder. Like the fist of God thrusting up towards the heavens, the stark, ragged mountains hold firm as thunderbolts crash down on all sides. The sound is deafening as it echoes from mountain peak to mountain peak. Mountains represent strength, power, and permanence, as well as being a potent symbol for attaining spiritual heights as they extend into the sky towards the heavens. Thunder and lightning traditionally represent surging power, enlightenment, and revelations of divine matters. Thunder ignites our deeper self and activates our primal and deep emotions. Together, the mountain and the thunder symbolize immense power, vitality, and strength. This is your time. This is the time to claim your power and step into your potential. This doesn't necessarily mean that you will be without fear. You might feel uncertain, but do it anyway. Be courageous. Let the world hear your voice. Take a stand. Stand up for yourself and others. Share your passion. Teach from the heart. Write, and your words will have great meaning. Hold your body as if you are incredibly valiant, noble, and brave, for after all, you are. All right, well, if you're someone who has watched this reading through because it was resonating with something you're going through at this time, I send so much love to you. These are really big and powerful and uncomfortable energies that are coming through. And, like I've said before in this reading, this time of year can bring those up, for a lot of us. So I do send you my a big astral hug. And I have had those holidays too. I've had a lot of them, so I understand. But I hope that um, this reading can bring a little feeling of power to the situation. It's funny. Look, power came up twice, right? It's like there's this message of power. Like you do have the power to get through this time, and you do have the power to move forward into a beautiful new chapter. And I'm wishing that for you from the bottom of my heart. All right, much love.